The trouble with using frog DNA to bring dinosaurs back from extinction is there's not really room for them in the office. Most days I'm just shooing a Styracosaurus off the Pevsners. Welcome to Monstrosities Amour, where we boop the nosy of the overlooked. I'm John Grindrod, author of Tales of the Suburbs, LGBTQ+ Lives Behind Net Curtains. I was having a lovely chat with cultural historian Emma Warren when she threw me in the boot of her Austin Maxis and sped away into the morning light. So, Emma, where the hell are we?
Well, we're not actually going to be able to park by the clock tower in Lewisham High Street, so we might have to kind of both do a sort of like parachute roll out of the car.
I'm up for that.
Because we're also actually, whilst we're by the clock tower in Lewisham, which will take us up into Lewisham High Street, we're also opposite the largest police station in Europe.
Which is a complete monolith, isn't it? I mean, what an extraordinary thing to have. You know, you've got this lovely little civic clock there, this enormous police station. It's quite a symbol.
It certainly is. Yes, it certainly is. In fact, but the clock tower wasn't always there. As long-term residents of Lewisham will be very pleased to tell you, it was moved. It dates back to Queen Victoria's time. It was built for her Diamond Jubilee, but it actually used to be on a traffic island, kind of like sort of within the high street, and then it was moved, I think, in the mid-90s. So the clock tower marks the sort of start of our little exploration of this bit of Lewisham. Yeah. I mean, it's just a funny thing because it's just making me think about, like, what on earth would motivate you to move a clock tower? I mean, there would have to be a really good reason for you to move it, wouldn't there? But move it did. And whether or not it's better or worse doesn't really matter. The clock tower is locked off because there's a lot of building work happening on this stretch of Lewisham. So it's become a kind of new little groups of people have configured themselves around the clock tower and around the little bits of space that are left for people to congregate. So there's a very lively, what you might call kind of like daytime drinking crew, currently in residence just on the little corner, one of the corners by the clock tower, which means there's always a lot of music and a lot of liveliness. And yeah, people are using the space as they see fit.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the things, isn't it? When they pedestrianise this area, pedestrians take it over. It's for people to kind of like move about, you know, and you're not going to get run over. You can actually, you know, you can occupy that space a bit more, which is kind of ironic given that it's outside this enormous police station.
It definitely brings a certain energy. Lewisham continues to be Lewisham, even in the face of this like somewhat oppressive building. In a way, I feel like Lewisham just turns its back on the police station to a certain extent. And I should also say that we're talking about monstrosities that are loved, but I would also say that Lewisham to me is like, it's not a monstrosity, it's a great London borough. It's also the first borough of sanctuary. And the things that are monstrous about the borough, and there are things that are monstrous about it. And for me, I would go straight actually to the built environment. You know, you've got the police station there. And then in a different way, you've got like the monstrosity of some of the recent developments that have happened. Like, you know, if we just look away from the clock tower, we'll see the Lewisham Gateway and the Filigree building, which was built. It's not particularly beautiful, but actually what's really ugly about it is that no one even lives there, because the basement was flooded, and so all the residents had to be moved out to all sorts of different places, meaning like, you know, difficulties for kids getting to school and so on. So
that's kind of an incredible story, that in itself, isn't it?
We're by the clock tower and there's so much gorgeousness ahead of us, but in a way we've just kind of got to get some of those, like the actual monstrosities which are nearby, out of the way before we can like fully take in the sights.
I lived in Lewisham for about 15 years. There is a huge sense of kind of protectiveness, I feel, among the people of Lewisham about the place. So even if they are kind of being super critical of it, if you're critical of it, they immediately like, no, the protective side comes out. Everyone's a bit of a lion about Lewisham.
I agree with you, and I think it is a place with a lot of local pride. And increasingly, as so many other London boroughs have just been rolled over by global finance, you know, we call it gentrification, but it's actually other things as well. Lewisham has retained a lot of its self, its character, and I think people have become increasingly proud of that. And the other thing that struck me when I was thinking about talking to you about the high street and showing you the high street was just to understand a bit more about like why that high street exists, or why this area exists. And originally it was a village green until the Enclosures Act of 1810. And I kind of feel like this bit of Lewisham retains that village green feel. Everybody is welcome. So much life is happening in Lewisham. Everyone's from everywhere. And people come together, use the space as they need to, buy the food they want and need to buy. And it's a lively place. It's a fascinating place. It's a very local place. And it feels real in the sense of, you spend your money somewhere, you're often giving your money to the person who owns the business. It's not, your money isn't just being siphoned off somewhere else.
From the clock tower, we're looking down. There's a huge market sort of stretching in front of us.
The market's been there since the early 1900s, I think 1906. And in a way, many aspects of it, I'd say, are pretty unchanged from then. And actually, a lot of the families that run the stores, families have been trading there since the 1930s. You can track some of that back. And it feels like there's a high degree of ownership of the space. It's like the people who live and work there own it. They're not being shoved out. You've so much space now in our cities which looks public but actually is private, and then you're not really welcome there in the same way. But this is really owned by people, and £1 a bowl actually now is more like £1.50 a bowl, because the increasing cost of things affects everybody. Although I found myself saying the other day, it's not a cost of living crisis, it's a cost of subsidising billionaires crisis. And maybe that shows up in like £1 a bowl has now become like £1.50 a bowl. But I love this market. I don't buy too much stuff from there, but I'll buy fruit and vegetables, fairly regularly. I've never bought a carpet there, although there is buy carpets opposite Rolls and Rems, it's like a drapery thing. But actually, there's a long history of drapers in Lewisham, because J. Sainsbury's, like the original Sainsbury's man, had a drapery in Lewisham. Apparently, because the suffragettes during those times would use the market for like meetings, or use that area for meetings. And when there was a local election, the drapers, J. Sainsbury's, put up the the colours of the different political parties that were in the election, but also the suffragettes' colours. But it was interesting to me that this has been a place where local politics has been played out, in the shops, on the street, in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, and I guess the most famous of a massive sort of political moment in the last 50 years would be the Battle of Lewisham, 1977, which sort of ends out kind of playing out in this very area, doesn't it? So what was the battle?
In 1977, the National Front decided that they wanted to execute their right to march and to have their freedom of expression, but they decided to do that in the borough of Lewisham, and particularly down Deptford High Street, which obviously back then, as it's now, is a very mixed area in terms of where people's families come from. People are British but Guyanese, British but Indian, British and Jamaican, British and lots of different things, just as people are also British and Scottish. So the National Front decided to march. Many people thought this was a very bad idea, a very dangerous idea, and tried to stop it through the official routes, but that didn't happen, including the then Mayor of Lewisham. But the Met Police decided that it should go ahead, and it did go ahead. And many people gathered in New Cross to try and stop this. So there were small numbers, a couple of hundred National Front supporters, who were flanked by the police in order to allow them to march. And thousands of people turned up to express their discontent at this arrangement. Inevitably, it turned violent. And the marchers were allowed to march to Lewisham, to a rally just behind where we are, just actually behind where the police station is now, where John Tyndall, who was the leader of the National Front, made a speech, which obviously was full of extremely offensive things. Reported at the time in Camera Work magazine, who also collated a lot of the photography that was taken at the time, in an issue called "What Are You Taking Pictures For?" Because that's a question someone asked the photographers. And so not only do they have the photographs, they have the photographers explaining why they were there and their accounts of events. Anyway, it's an incredible moment I wrote about it in my book, Dance Your Way Home. So I kind of spent a long time trying to understand what had really happened. There's some incredible archive in one of the London video archives of what happened, of a huge gathering that took place in Ladywell beforehand, a kind of peace rally. The way people got to the beginning of the march, the actual kind of sort of ruckus that happened during the march, including, I believe, the police. There was horses, and I think it was the first time that certain police kind of instruments had been used, apart from in the north of Ireland, sort of in the UK. Wow. So a really momentous moment. But the National Front were broadly believed to have been shamed by that and squashed. And in the words of someone who was there, they didn't bother coming back again. But obviously these battles always need fighting.
It feels like there is a really progressive and sort of can-do and sort of revolutionary spirit in Lewisham that story really, really encapsulates.
I mean, I think it's just full of life and it's lively. And that liveliness extends to people taking a stand about local issues. So you might have people from the Save Lewisham shopping centre, just kind of like out there talking about it. You might have people kind of, declaring a religious faith of one kind or another. You'll often have pro-Palestine gatherings as well. You'll often have people selling political newspapers. Obviously, around the time of the Battle of Lewisham, I believe the National Front sold their newspaper in Lewisham High Street as well. So there are long histories of people with strong political opinions using the space to say what they think.
You mentioned the shopping centre protests. One of the things about this whole area is it feels like every building and every space is kind of up for grabs and has got to be kind of like quite carefully kind of protected, and people are constantly having to protest to kind of keep places. And the shopping centre might seem quite an odd place for people to be so passionate about. But actually, I guess it's not so much the shopping centre, but more what the redevelopment represents, which is something else, isn't it, for the area?
Yes. I mean, I think there are, reasonable grounds for people to be concerned about the development, because there's only 6% social rent, I believe, in the new development. But I think actually, if you scratch beneath the surface of the particularities of the people who are protesting against it, it's actually about this like really special local character, which is increasingly rare when so many places have just been steamrolled by the same chain stores and adverts for cryptocurrency and, just things which are not about people's everyday lives. Yeah. And, right where we are, the clock tower, you've got like really great places to eat. And then just to our right, you've got this kind of like padded doorway between the British Heart Foundation and a phone shop called the Julin Hidden Village. And up there you can do salsa, bachata, belly dance, tai chi, Wing Chun, and also people run Northern Soul Nights there. Now that's just one doorway. That sucks in so many different people. It's so lively. It's so full of life. And it's very Lewisham. In a way, it couldn't be more Lewisham. So I think the issue with the redevelopment, people do, kind of frame it in terms of the social housing. But I think the big fear is that what has been retained and what is now so rare, almost like the sort of spatial place-based version of an endangered species, ordinary places run by people for people, are just at risk. I don't know if when you lived here, if you ever went into Chef's Treat. So we're going to have to walk a little bit up the high street for Chef's Treat. It'll just take us a few minutes. So we'd have to walk past, sort of up through the market, past the sort of shopping centre, which was previously called the Riverdale Centre when I was growing up in Bromley. And then just up a little bit on the left-hand side, opposite McDonald's, which is also locally famous because it was immortalised in a tune by The Square in 2015, called Lewisham McDee's. One of the members of The Square was a novelist who went on to become very, very well-known MC, who was also previously to that Lewisham's deputy young mayor, so very local. And the lyrics of the tune basically kind of offer out McDonald's. So it's like, wanna clash me, Lewisham McDee's. It's brilliant. And the video for it has someone dressed as Ronald McDonald doing like a flying drop kick through the air. Highly recommend it. So opposite Lewisham McDee's, you have Chef's Treat, which is, I think, like one of the best kind of cafes in London. Until quite recently, a cup of tea was 95p. Ooh. I mean, a cup of tea is now, I think, like over £1.50. But it gives you a sense of the place, jacket potato, probably around a £5. The people that run it, you go in and people are like welcomed by name. And, people really know each other in there. It's a place where you can really go to get affordable, big oval plate full of food. And, people talk about like shopping local, and often that has quite a middle class kind of framing around it.
Yeah.
But actually going to Chef Street is shopping local, and Chef Street buy like their mushrooms and their tomatoes from the market. And there's no difference between who's walking past and who's inside. Some doorways only suck in certain people and other doorways suck in a broader demographic. And Chef Street, it's like the market on the inside, or it's like someone's front room, and it's a great place.
That's gorgeous. And it is really lovely to kind of find places like that feel like everybody is welcome.
If I was you, I wouldn't try and sit outside Chef's Treat because those seats, I would say, are reserved.
Fair enough.
I mean, you can try, but, it might not go down very well.
What can we see ahead of us?
But if we were to continue up, we would probably go past the Church of St. Saviour and St. John the Baptist and Evangelist, and would be heading up towards the library, Lewisham Library, the main library in Lewisham, which has been under reconstruction for some time now, I'd say like well over a year. I'm looking forward to it reopening because, Lewisham Library is doing an amazing job. Their library in Deptford isn't even called a library, it's called Deptford Lounge. And they have like brilliant events going on all the time. The staff are great. So I think Lewisham Libraries do a brilliant job. And so it'd be great when that one's reopened.
Not my most recent book, but the one before that. I did loads of research for that in that library. I was a very proud library card wielder.
I remember talking to, and I don't recall who the musician was or the DJ, but it was someone local who talked about how important the record borrowing part of the library had been. Because you could borrow like records and cassettes, way back in the day. And that had been the most unbelievable resource for them. Makes me think about, music education. Until 2010, people could still get free music lessons at school or kind of free instruments. And actually having access to like a music library like that as well, it's so important because it just gives access to music to people who might otherwise not have it. And I know everything's on the internet, but somehow I think it kind of, it like focuses you, doesn't it? Or gives you other options when you actually see like music in front of you. I mean, I doubt very much if there'll be like a record borrowing part of the new library, but you talking about being in there just reminded me of being in there, which took me back to this particular room in the library that I hadn't thought about for a long time.
Yeah, it is interesting that also where it's positioned, that it's positioned at the end of this lovely pedestrianised stretch where you've got, the market, it's all these kind of very kind of generous kind of public spaces. It's the perfect spot for a big library. Like, it's a really perfect position for it. So I hope when it reopens, they're able to kind of recapture that feeling of being part of the community and not sort of separated from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think my guess is it will be a very Lewisham library, which means it will be porous, it will be democratically available, and it will be a good place to be. As soon as it's reopened, I'll probably go and start working in there as well.
Lovely. Well, I mean, this has been an amazing little trip down memory lane for me, actually, walking along here. I've really, really enjoyed it. But when I was in the boot of the Maxi, it wasn't just me in there. There were a figurine in there. What was going on there? Why was I surrounded by all these little figurines? Well,
you were surrounded by some holy water bottles shaped like Mary, with Our Lady of Lourdes written at the bottom of it. And with this kind of, so it's essentially a holy water bottle holder. So like a water bottle, but the stopper is at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So the figurine is kind of standing on the stopper in kind of Marian blue and holding a rosary. And they sell them in the repository at the Church of St. Saviour and St. John the Baptist and Evangelist that I just mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
Which also has lots of different statues in there, including statues which probably more accurately reflect the ethnicity of the people in question, given that they were all from the kind of Swana region, which generally, some people might have blonde hair and blue eyes, but probably not that many people. So within that church, I was brought up Catholic, but I am fully lapsed. But I am, like many lapsed Catholics, occasionally drawn back into the church just to kind of sit and be and maybe light a candle for like a loved lost one. And that church is kind of very beautiful on the inside. It's like there's quite a lot of ornamentation and, like I say, these kind of beautiful statues, which are also used by people to kind of for prayer. So some of them are kind of like rubbed away on parts of the statue because they're used.
Yeah.
And actually, I got locked in there not too long ago.
How did that happen?
Well, I had quite a big bereavement, and so I'd kind of gone in towards the end of the day, just slightly on a whim, and I sat there while there was a Feria Mass happening, which is just like the ordinary daytime mass if it's not like a particular like celebration day, and sat at the back, and then everybody left, and then I was kind of still sat there and went and lit a candle for my friend, and then I went to the door to leave, and it was locked. It had gone.
How did you get out?
Well, I had to shout for the priest. I was like, excuse me, hello. And then the priest kind of eventually emerged from the back in his like day wear and was like, do you need letting out? God bless. And he let me out a side door. So I made it back out.
Good job you caught them in time.
Well, it would have made for an interesting evening, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, at least you would have had your holy water supply with you.
Indeed. But they do have a repository in the church, which is sort of like a sort of shop where you can buy like religious things. But my relationship to this really comes from my Irish grandma, who had loads of these sorts of things around the house that she was in when I was a child. So there'd be like little containers containing holy water sort of nailed to the door so that you could bless yourself in and out, and like Holy Mary, Virgin water bottles and Sacred Heart things and like little Padre Pio statues. And she also had on her wall, she was very proud of, a framed special dispensation from the Pope, which meant that she could not go to Mass because she sometimes wasn't very well.
Yeah.
And what that meant was that if you didn't go to Mass, because you had the special dispensation from the Pope, it meant that you wouldn't go to hell. So she was very grateful to have the special dispensation, and it absolutely had pride of place kind of on the wall in the front room. And so, I like this on a number of levels, including the fact that it connects me to my grandmother. And I think that kind of the way that people visualize their faith into objects can be really beautiful. Although obviously it goes without saying that the way that the far right have co-opted Christianity generally and Catholicism in particular is extremely concerning.
And that also kind of feels like it has, a mirror to Lewisham more widely, doesn't it? Sort of seeing that kind of co-option of, places and things and symbols that, for ill, that were designed for good, things that were designed for all of us being used as a kind of exclusive symbol for one group.
Absolutely. And just one more thing on that note was that I was in Lewisham the other Saturday morning, and there were some people who were like a group I didn't recognise, like had microphone and loudspeaker, and they were kind of speaking about the Christian faith. And I walked past and someone said, "Do you want to talk about the Bible?" And I was like, no, I don't. Walked on. And then I thought, actually, you know what? So I went back and said, actually, I would like to say something. And that's that, anyone who's preaching Christianity at the moment, like it would be really good if you were also preaching against the far right, because the far right are using Christianity in this country in a really dangerous way. And the way the man responded made me think that he wasn't very Christian. So I feel like there's something happening which we can be aware of. And if we are hearing people preaching faith, which is being instrumentalized in a quite a terrifying way at the moment, then we can ask that question. And I'm certainly going to be asking that question again next time. Politely, of course, and respectfully, because many people are just of faith and everybody has the right to inhabit and express their faith as they see fit. But it struck me as interesting.
I mean, these have been really beautiful and thought-provoking choices that you've come up with, which is lovely. Which, when you suggested that it might be that you were having the holy water bottle. I was like, where's this going? So, but yeah, really, really, really lovely. And then it ties so beautifully into your work more widely as well, and your lovely new book about the wonder of youth clubs, which I guess, is something that people haven't really eulogized about for a long time. And then it feels like in the last couple of years, suddenly there is a bit of a groundswell of realization of the preciousness and the wonder of these things. How did you come to write about youth clubs?
Well, again, I think my interest as a writer is in things which are locally beneficial, in things which are normal and ordinary and lively, and which relate to community, and which relate to physical space, and which relate to how we all get on with each other. And I went to youth club myself in the borough of Bromley. I've worked in youth clubs and youth projects across southeast London. But I just knew that youth clubs were culturally valuable and that they'd had a massive impact on UK music culture. And that's where I began, really. I knew that there was a relationship between the nightclub, the music that ends up in the charts, and the youth club, and that you just have to scratch the surface to find those connections. People going to youth club, going to the youth club disco, being able to DJ at the youth club disco. I DJ'd at the youth club disco in Orpington at Holy Innocents Church. I had, my 13th birthday party there, and I think someone stole my 12-inch of Billy Ocean.
That's outrageous.
I only had the 7-inch. So the connection between these parts of our cultural life were completely obvious to me, but I knew that they were almost invisible to almost everybody else. So that's kind of why I wrote it.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's called Up the Youth Club, Illuminating a Hidden History. And I feel like that's absolutely what it does. It shines a light on, and also because you've told the story through lots of individuals that are smaller stories. So it's one of those histories that is lovely because it kind of grows up kind of organic. As you're reading it, you get a bigger idea of a story from all of these small stories, which is really, really lovely thing. So it's very lovely to kind of have that as a way of telling this story because it feels so integral to the spirit of the story as well, which is really lovely.
Well, it's like a chorus of voices, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, sometimes they're in harmony, sometimes they're clashing, but it is definitely a kind of history from within, and it's people telling their own histories. And I've tried to sort of orchestrate them into a story that allows readers, whether they went to youth club or not, to get a sense of the kind of comedy and joy and energy and potential of these places.
Yeah, which you've absolutely done, which is a glorious thing. So where can people find out more about your work, Emma? Well,
I'm often out and about talking about things, often that relate to, community, culture, space, that sort of thing. Where can you find out about my work? I suppose just I'm easy to find on the internet and you'd get a sense from there. Or if you were coming to Lewisham, my friends run this thing called the Southeast Salon, which happens a little bus ride away from where we are, up at the Hill Station Cafe, which is at the top of Telegraph Hill, which is a fantastic place to go any day of the week. But second Wednesday of the month, my friends run something called the Southeast Salon, which is all about Lewisham, people who care about community, culture, young people, blah, blah, blah. And they always have different speakers. So I'll always be there. And I guess I'm saying that really partly also just because I think it's really important. If we love our local places, we actually have to use them. And everyone will have their own version of a Hill Station Cafe or a Chef's Tree or an Antonio's, or any of these places. And I just really feel like we just need to use them because we can't necessarily stop the massive developments, but we can keep our little shops going just by going there and making our friends go there and spending our money there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very good point to kind of end on, is that actually, our participation in these places is what makes them. You're writing, so much is about community, and, it's easy to forget that we are the community. We are the people that make these things happen. Exactly.
Communities are much kind of a word which is being instrumentalized in some unhelpful ways. But essentially, it's just like neighborhood. It's the village green. It's just like doing stuff together in normal ways with short economic chains where you're just like the person you give your money to is probably taking it home that evening. So I feel like Lewisham High Street is a good example of that. But obviously, everyone will have their own their own versions of these places.
Definitely. Well, I'm starving now, so I think we should head back to Chef's Street for...
Excellent. I'm having a jacket potato.